everyone. Welcome to another awesome day of FileMaker Training. I am Richard Carlton, creator of fmtraining.tv with a team of people here, and we're always excited to have all of you out there on the internet. A bunch of our live stream followers are here with us today. I've got, hopefully all of you on Discord can hear me. Last week,
It was technically Friday, I think.
Of the week before?
Yes.
Okay. Claris shipped an update. And so that's what happened. So we're all like running around scrambling to make sure that we're prepared to talk about FileMaker version 20.3 intelligently, right? Now, I'm not very intelligent, so to help me with intelligence, I have HOnza from 24U is here. He's the intelligent person. I am just the TV personality, and I just read what people type for me right on screen. I have my little teleprompter right now. What we're going to do is the next 2 days are going to be kind of dedicated to this conversation about 20.3. Claris didn't really consider it a major update, but it's got some non-trivial things in it that are kind of important for as a professional developer. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go through a high altitude overview of what's in the product. And then after that, we are going to throw it to HOnza for his performance testing. So it used to be a lot of different developers would do performance testing and then would throw out the results. And what we determined is that HOnza is such a performance-minded individual, and he has that benchmark app and shows you how your scripts go slow and how to make them go faster. It's even a product that he has, that we just let HOnza do the benchmarking, and we just trust him to deliver accurate information. So we're very excited to have him here today with that. I'm going to start off here, HOnza. Feel free to interrupt, right? Interrupt as necessary. Yes?
Okay.
Good. All right, cool. So up front, this is the fluffy press release that Claris threw out to the developer community. So first off, there are some bug fixes, several bug fixes that I've noticed on the Mac side of things. If you're a Mac user, you've watched me over the last couple weeks run into a bug that would crash FileMaker, where you would end up doing a self-join in a relationship graph. That's been patched in this version of FileMaker. There's also another bug that I've run into when I'm renaming a bunch of scripts, maybe changing the numbers and resequencing the scripts. You'll get to a thing where it goes really slow, and then that's your clue to quit FileMaker and reopen it. But if you proceed on that mode of still renaming scripts, then eventually it crashes. And so that's been fixed as well, plus a bunch of other things. There is a technical specifications document. In fact, Margaret, this link right here, this Claris community link, if you want to find this and grab this, I guess I could post it into the chat here in Zoom. Let's do that. Make sure you post that out to everyone. But the short version is that we have a bunch of bug fixes and better support for macOS Sonoma, etc. The layout calculation object. So back in October, right when we were at pause on air, Claris, right before that, like a couple days before that, launched the 20.2 release. And that had some major nice things in it. And so they gave us a new object, a layout object called the layout calculation object, an LCO. And that has been improved a little bit with this release of 20.3. So once again, we could talk about that more tomorrow, but it's pretty straight ahead, straightforward. Now, I'm not going to spend too much time on this right here. Claris FileMaker Solutions run faster with performance enhancements, bug fixes, etc. I'm going just to gracefully walk past this topic because we're going to circle back to this with HOnza, okay? And then this part, get efficient, error-free deployments of your solution via command line automation, okay? That's pretty grandiose for someone to say error-free deployments. I have not validated the truthfulness of that statement. That being said, what Claris has done is that this is the developer utility. You've seen us talk about this. This is if you're in FileMaker, I go over here to FileMaker and I say tools and I say developer utilities. The features that are in here, which used to include the runtime creator, right? This is where that was at, right? It was removed, so I'm not talking about that, but this is this area, these developer utilities, they're still in there. They're still there, but they've also taken them out and replicated them into a command line environment, okay? So once again, these are the items that they talk about. Recovering a file, I don't think was in that one before, but they've kind of added it in there. Enabling and removing file encryption. This is the EAR stuff right here. Removing administrative access. We talked about that before. That is a permanent sort of removal of administrative access. And even if you have all the security codes and things like that, the administrative privilege set is effectively removed. So there's no undo for that, right? If you do that. Now, keep in mind that the developer utility takes a FileMaker file or a set of FileMaker files and kicks out copies of them, a copy set that has been altered, right? So just keep that in mind. So running a compressed copy, saving a copy is XML. I don't know if that's XML version 1 or 2, probably version 1. There's these, for those of you who remember, we talk about the Star Trek transporter, this high fidelity XML creation capability. That's something that's been in the product since FileMaker loosely 17, they started playing with it. It's never really been fully finished. We can use it sometimes. It's what makes add-ons work, right? But it's incomplete in the sense that if the easiest way is an analogy, right? Star Trek, they always talked about the Star Trek transporter. You beam from point A to point B, and it turns you into molecules, shoots you through the air, and then rematerializes you. This Star Trek transporter will lop off a finger or an ear or something when you do it currently. So Claris is aware of this. They know that they want to fix it and make it better. The idea is that if you beam someone or a FileMaker file, an FMP12 file from point A to point B, it does it completely without messing it up. What comes out the other side is a perfect reproduction with perfect fidelity is the goal, okay? Recovering a damaged file. So all these are things that you could do with the command line tool. And then enabling kiosk mode, which back before some of you were born, everyone thought that the world would be run by kiosk. Kiosk is basically an ATM machine that doesn't kick out money. I mean, that's what ATM machines are, is kiosks, right? With a money shooter thingy at the bottom that shoots out a receipt and your money, or it puts money in, or whatever you do. All right, so that is, so we started off with improvements to layout calculation object, improvements to operating system support, bug fixes. This performance issue, we're going to kick it down the road. The developer utilities are still there, but have been replicated into the command line, which gives people like HOnza and Christian Schmidt and 360 Works and the guys and gals, the people at Proofgeist, they can do some really cool things with that tool as well. Then we have simplified administration through HTTP tunneling. We're going to talk about this more tomorrow, but it's the idea of pumping FileMaker not through 5003 on the port number, but pumping it through what I would normally just say 80, but 80 is unencrypted, so it really runs through 443. So FileMaker traffic looks to the firewall in your router as web traffic, not as this weird 5003 traffic. So that's what tomorrow we'll cover this in more detail tomorrow about that. Jacob Tay will be around. If we have time, we'll roll into that. But it's interesting, and it was kind of a throw together project that the Claris engineers did. I think they were testing it or helping a customer out, and then they realized that other other enterprise-sized customers might value the idea of not punching holes in the firewall. Because whenever you go to a network person and say, hey, open up so I can use FileMaker server through our network, and they say, well, I don't want to make a hole through the firewall because that could be exploited. Well, odds are they already have a limited set of holes through the firewall on port 80 and 443. 443 is encrypted traffic, so 443. And if they can already have that kind of open on the firewall, then if FileMaker could behave and play nicely with port 80 and 443, once again, I'm saying 80 just to help some of you who are not super deep into this stuff, then the idea is they could go right through the firewall that way, right? So with the existing rules, so you don't have to necessarily make a firewall change, or if there's a change, it would be fairly minor. So that's the idea behind this, and that's the short version of this conversation. So what I want to do now is HOnza spent a lot of time, he was up late at night working on the performance monitor or performance testing to see where we're at. And so I haven't covered anything about what Claris has done in terms of caching and looping and any of that stuff, HOnza, right? So I'm going to stop sharing. I'm going to let you share your screen if you want to kind of kick this conversation off.
Okay, so here's my screen. Can you see it?
Yep, you are there. We see you.
Great. So as soon as the 20.3 came out, obviously I was curious how fast it will be, especially as thanks to the release notes, which said, okay, we made performance improvements, but you won't read in the release notes what you should expect. Is it going to be twice as fast, 10 times as fast, or just a tiny faster? So I always use this tool that you can download free from our website called Bench Test. There are hundreds of test results already published, run by the community. And this time I simply ran the test, the standard test set on a few different configurations. I was comparing 20.2 and 20.3, and I was using Mac Pro, that trash can computer, as a client running FileMaker Pro, and connecting to two different servers. One was the Mac Studio with M1 Max processor, and the other one was I think 13-year-old mini PC running Ubuntu 20 and then also Ubuntu 22 Linux. This is a lot of values I got, but I'll show a few interesting charts and then we can dive into more, ask questions and whatever. So basically, what this bench test tool does as a first glance is that it runs 111 tests on the setup that you run it on, and then calculates a weighted average of a score for each test. And the score itself is basically a calculation how much faster that test performed compared to my reference setup, which used to be Mac Pro 2010 over local network. So 13-year-old computer running FileMaker server. So basically anything today should be faster than that. So 2 points 53 faster means that it's that times faster. So this is just using a different reference value here because I run also other tests. But don't worry about these numbers. The real numbers are here. So in the chart, 4 here in the bottom means that's 4 times faster than the reference setup. 20 means 20 times faster. So this is the overall score running those 111 tests. And when I started, I first simply opened it in FileMaker Pro locally as a file. And instead of 18, the 20.3 was 20 times faster than the reference setup. So that's better. Reminder, wider bar means faster, okay? When I run it on a FileMaker server and connect it to the FileMaker server from the same machine, that's what localhost means. I was running FileMaker Pro and FileMaker server on the same Mac Studio. This was the result. So again, 20.3 was about a little bit over 10% faster than 20.2. Now, when I tried the local network from the Mac Pro to Mac Studio, it was not so good. So 20.3 showed a little bit worse score than 20.2. And the same was when I simulated a slow ADSL connection. I used the Apple's network conditioner control panel, which lets you set a bandwidth, packet loss, and latency. So in this case, I set it to 100 megabits downstream, 10 megabits upstream, and 125 milliseconds latency. So basically, simulating average internet connection, like when you're connecting to your server from home or connecting to a cloud, things like that.
So the question I immediately have is that I don't like it to go slower. So your test is an aggregate of a bunch of tests. Do we know what specifically is running slower? What test, or have you not determined that yet?
Kind of. So basically, when I saw this result, I was curious as well. So what I did was I went to this list of all the individual tests, and I simply went to the individual charts, comparing
individual tests,
values, the results for each individual test. And as I went through it, you see that there were not consistent, that the same test would be consistently faster or slower on one or the other. But when I ran the whole set of tests again on the 20.3, I got the same score. So somehow the overall performance is about a little bit slower on slow network and a little bit faster on a fast network or locally. But what really stood out were these three tests.
Well,
So,
the interesting thing is I've had 3 people who didn't know about your testing here come to me and say they thought that dealing with the relationships was faster, faster in this product than in the previous version. And so I'm trying
and
to.
I'll get to it
Okay.
because 2 of these 3 tests are actually related to it. So one that stood out was sorting records for the first time, and this was what's important here in this chart is this iteration number 1. So basically, what I do is every runs 3 times. But because I have no way to programmatically get rid of the cache, when I do something that can utilize the cache, only the first time it needs to use the server and get the data from the server, because the second and third iteration is already utilizing the cache. So this was the first time it was sorting the 10,000 records by an unindexed unique value. And in 20.3, as you can see here, it was significantly faster on the local network. So that stood out as a first thing. The other one, before I show you the chart, I'll show you what the test was doing. So the create records and close file, that's related to, it doesn't matter. What I'll show you is the file. So there is an additional file. I actually have to go to the test because the file needs to be open, and I intentionally don't open the file until running the test, so I need to find it. Flow relationship graph. This is the test. So I'll open that file now, and now it's open, and I'll show. This is a file that Vincent Lunier shared a few years ago in the community, complaining about speed. And what he was complaining is that in this file, just creating records was taking insane amount of time. And by insane, I mean that just creating 100 records was taking minutes. And this is what the graph looks like. So I will zoom out, zoom out, zoom out, zoom out, zoom out, zoom out. And now you see.
All right, so I'm pretty sure that this person violated my anchor buoy training for high performance. This is a violation. This is very unnatural.
So this is a legacy part of the relationship graph.
Damn.
And the rest of the file was already rebuilt using Anchor buoy, but this was the legacy chart, that the legacy table occurrence graph group that was still there. The thing that Vincent complained about was that it was affecting the speed of creating record, even though none of these relationships is actually in use.
All right, and this is what I tried to train last week when we had the training. We were talking about this real quick. I'm gonna flip over here to the 2 of us. As I was explaining, and this is your HOnza, perfect chance for you to have a drink. Is people were saying, well, Richard, if I don't really use all the buoys off the anchor, does that still slow things down? Yes, it does. And this person here did that and then had a solution that was really horrifically slow. And so that's why we do anchor buoy the way we do it, right? So
by the way, the point of this test file is that there is a single table in which we are creating record, and that table does not even have more than one table occurrence, and that table occurrence is completely isolated from everything else. So it's not part of this table occurrence group.
Okay.
And still, the fact that this thing
Oh.
is there is causing that record creation to be slow. So basically, what I am testing with this part of test is how long it takes to open that file, how long it takes to create 100 records, how long it takes to delete 100 records, and how long it takes to close that file. Okay.
And these are running locally or on this. Oh, you could run it on the server, right? Because I'd want to see this on the server, not for me locally, but on the server, right?
Yeah. Well, I'm now actually connected to my own computer as a server, but
Okay.
that's localhost. Okay. So it's actually worse in a local file because the server caches the relationship somehow. But what FileMaker 20.3 is supposed to improve is the way how relationships are cached for operations like checking dependencies when you modify data, okay? And this is the result of testing it in with bench test.
That's the one that we all want to pay attention to, okay? So this is a network connection that's pretty speedy. This is a simulated network connection with what, a 10% packet loss? Is that what you said?
No, 0% packet loss, but 125 milliseconds latency.
125 over here milliseconds. Now, by the way, officially in the Claris specifications, they say that the product is designed to work with a network speed of no more than 150 milliseconds. Just so you know, that's Claris's official specs, although people do whatever they want to do. Do you know what your milliseconds over here is?
I can quickly check, but I think it's like under 5 milliseconds.
Okay, so 5 milliseconds is across town potentially, or within the same building. Right?
It's actually maybe even less. So let me check. So let's check the single client to over LAN. So the latency here was around
okay. That's within the same building, same network, same building. Might be the difference between second and third floor if you're in a bigger building, but that's building level specific. So if you come back over to over here, this is where the relationship graph is running faster, right? Measurably. And so that's where people said they thought they noticed a speed improvement, mostly with some of my senior engineers had large solutions. They said that it was caching or doing something. Obviously, if you're running it locally, it's even bigger delta, but I almost never run important solutions locally just because I want it backed up on the server over here always, right? So, and this right here is sufficiently slow. This is like going from the US to the Europe, right? Is 125 milliseconds, because from East Coast to West Coast of the United States is typically about 70, okay, milliseconds. I know if I go from California to Mumbai, India is the worst possible one. Even under ideal conditions, it's about 300, and I remember 32. It was pretty crazy. So, yeah, so that gives you an idea of where you're going to see that. So here it's wrestling a lot with just, it's wrestling a lot with the performance and speed. All right, cool. Questions we have from people?
Well, it's just people commenting, mostly. That is crazy that an isolated TO still gets a performance hit from unrelated parts of the database.
Yeah, that's from Mike. Yeah, so that's an I'm kind of surprised by that. I think certainly if you're on a TO that has anchors like that one you saw in that spider diagram, we would expect there to be performance hits. When we were doing basic training, I was trying to explain that to people. But I think it has to take in somehow there's some sort of totality of the entire relationship graph it has to evaluate or think about, and that's part of this.
Actually, it's more difficult. It's not the number of relationships or table occurrences, but it's what is the biggest factor is the number of connections between two table occurrences. So this number grows exponentially with every table occurrence added to a table occurrence group. That's why anchor buoy is so important concept, because if you have 2 table occurrence groups with 10 table occurrences each, and if you have 1 table occurrence group with 20, that's not twice as slow. But
Oh,
it may
you're
be,
saying it's exponential behavior.
yes.
Oh, okay. So let me try. Okay.
So what is the major factor is the total number of connections between 1 and 2nd table occurrence. So that's the biggest factor. And some routines in FileMaker, when you make a change, and FileMaker has to figure out, okay, what is affected by that change and where do I have to update something? That goes through something which can be called a list of dependencies. And this list of dependencies is actually based on these all possible connections. So that's what FileMaker has to go through every time you make a change.
Yep. No, absolutely. That's an important one. So it's kind of quiet over here on the conversation.
So basically, this concept, or this factor dependency is the biggest performance cost of one of the coolest features FileMaker has ever had, and that's the fact that when you make a change in a record, then all connected users who have that record open on the screen will see the change almost immediately. This is a cool feature that FileMaker is unique about, but this is the performance cost of it.
Okay, so yeah, there's a little bit of a conversation going on Twitch about some people are doing rebuilds and they're once again trying to use anchor buoy as best you can, and so that would be ideal. I know that the reason I always knew that anchor buoy is fast, but then when you did that performance testing back in 2017 at that the Euro DevCon whatever event, and you had that slideshow, remember that? And you did anchor buoy performance testing. Yeah, I mean, anyone who questions anchor buoy, I just send them to HOnza in his slideshow and say, hey, here it is. This is the performance guy. He knows the performance stuff. So in FileMaker, so let's talk about, do you want to talk about that loop script option now a little bit? Have you tested that at all? Where are we at with that?
But before I get to that, let me tell you what is the cost of this improvement.
Okay.
Because we don't get anything for free, right? So
okay.
So we get this nice improvement, but there is a cost to it, and that's closing that file. But honestly, if I have to make a decision,
yes,
I will definitely trade slower closing for faster record creation.
Absolutely, because most time when you close the file, at least that gives you an opportunity to get up and get a coffee or go for a stretch or do something. So.
Yeah, but there, this is just a reminder that there is whenever they come up making something faster, it's very likely that something else has become slower.
Well, they moved. So it has to be done, so they move the processing from point A to point B, right? Which is
not always. There sometimes is like unnecessary processing that can be removed, but it's very rare that it's only pure removal. Sometimes new code has to be written, and that new code obviously creates a new overhead somewhere. Okay, so let me go into that new thing, and that's loop options. So we let me show you first what this is about. So when we have a loop, there is a new option here, and we can check whether how often or how frequently the cache is flushed in that loop. So for instance, if we go through a set of records and we modify them, how often the updates gets actually pushed to the server and to the other clients. Normally, the default in previous versions is always, and now we have two other options, minimum and differ. Minimum should be the most suspended version, so it only flushes the cache as as often as absolutely necessary. Therefore, I'm not sure about the exact definition, whether I haven't checked the help, to be honest, but I was just wondering what the performance impact is. So I'm not sure about the exact difference, but the performance difference. What I was wondering about was this, and because in the previous versions where Claris actually added the transactionals, what I was also comparing it with without and with transactions. So as you can see here, this impact of the new loop options of cache flushing options are basically negligible, while at least in comparison to the single transaction. So single transaction has bigger impact in this specific case, and I have to emphasize this because all these tests were running a single client connected to the server, and the cache option, the cache flushing options should specifically address the issue when the updates are too frequent when you have other clients connected. But this is more difficult to test in laboratory conditions like this because what is supposed to be affected is not the performance of this computer or the client running the script or running the loop, but the performance of all the other clients, because they are supposed to receive the updates from your changes less often, and that should be a huge impact, especially if you are running a really busy loop over thousands of records.
Well, the other part of this is that I made a request to Claris for deeper technical information on this feature, and I made it to some folks there, and they said they would run around and see if they could come up with kind of their back under the hood conversation about this. One of the things is that when you're looping, it has to do with relationship caching, but there's a million. And HOnza pointed out one possibility here is that the permutations is that if a bunch of people are being on the server, and I'm going to restate what he said. Say you have 100 people being on the server, and you're running a loop that's updating a bunch of records. Every time you update a record and you actually commit that change, the server runs out and it checks to see if those other 99 people need that update because they happen to be on that record somehow, or looking at it or some way interacting with it. Then they get pushed out. And if you're looping, you could be carpet bombing the other 99 users with updates. So transactions helps with this. But the other part of this is understanding that is if you're on a relationship, are you pulling data through the relationship? Are you pushing data through the relationship? There's all sorts of permutations. You've got globals on one side of the relationship. Does that affect things? I don't have any good technical data on that pop-up, except that it's always minimum and defer. And the description for Claris that I got was like one sentence description, which says what we can all kind of guess. That's with relationships, and it'll always push the changes or defer the changes or the minimum amount of changes. So
maybe let's just grab the description from the release notes in Discord. So there is a little bit explanation there.
Yeah, that's what I got last night when I asked this question. So I'm gonna read it for everyone. It always says when setting a field within a loop, the relationship, and I'm gonna ask which relationship, maybe the relationship that you're using through the set field command, is flushed along with the join data. I think on every iteration of the loop. Once again, this description is really hard. Can you copy and paste that into the other places like Twitch and YouTube so you can see this? And then the minimum, it says when setting a field within a loop, minimal data is flushed. Defer when setting a field within the loop, data and relation are flushed only acts after exiting the loop. And so that the first should be the fastest mode, like a transaction, right? Except on your screen here, it's not necessarily. Doesn't look like a transaction. So
I would still be interested finding out what exactly this means. If that means that if I set a field that actually is a key to the relationship, if that setting the minimum or defer will mean that the relationship will still look to the through the original key, or if that's not going to be updated. So I think more technical information will be very helpful on this. So maybe a better way to present the news would be answering the question, okay, what's going to break if I change the option?
Clearly your testing shows transactions within a loop are super helpful, right? Correct?
Yes, definitely. In one of those previous sessions we had together, I was showing a much more detailed explanation of what is affected by the transactions. I was even surprised, but it was my fault that I shouldn't be surprised that the impact was not as huge as I expected originally. One of the reasons is if you, let's say, my expectation was that especially on a slow network, the impact would be huge, but because there would be less packets being sent between client and the server. But the truth is that the client still needs to send the server a lock record request for every record you modify.
Yep.
So even though the commit is happening in a single transaction, it still needs to send lock record request for every single record.
Well, if you ever want to come back sometime and talk about that conversation again and rediscuss that, that would be a good one to have again, because that's been a while since we really talked about transactions like that. Other questions about performance? We're about 45 minutes in. We don't have to spend the full hour. We can give you folks the rest of the top of your hour. We're going to pick up this conversation tomorrow with Jacob Taylor on some of the HTTPS tunneling stuff. We've been playing with that a little bit.
And if there are no questions, I may share a little bit of bonus information that I learned.
Well then, yeah, you can activate bonus mode right now. That would be great.
So I were at the Engage U conference, and I met a customer there, which we helped to optimize his solution several times. But there was one issue that he ran into that actually Clay Meckle helped him to optimize or work around. And the issue is he was running a script to find records. And then he from a million records, he found 100 records. And then he was narrowing that found set down to a few records using a constraint found set, but he was using the less than or greater than comparison operator in the find request. And as he did that, he discovered that FileMaker in that constraint found set was again dealing with all those million records instead of just that's 100 records in the current found set. And the counterintuitive solution to this was, in that constraint found set, instead of searching in an indexed field, he needed to switch to searching in an unindexed calculation. Because when you search in an index field, FileMaker has to use the index.
Right.
Or not has to, but it does use the index, because in most cases, using the index is faster. But because the index exists for those million records.
It has to use the index for all million records.
And because using the less than or greater than relationship, it doesn't have to just find a single node in the index, but it has to traverse through all the index and concatenate all those subsets of records together. While if you use an unindexed calculation field, it just uses that current found set and runs through the 100 records manually on the client.
All right, that right there was worth the cost of entry today. That right there is a super sweet hot tip. Everyone catch that? Let me see if I can articulate this. You want me to try doing what you just did, HOnza? See if I can do it?
Yeah.
Okay, here we go.
Go ahead.
So you have a million records, you do a find. You get a found set of 100 records. That's pretty quick, okay? Then the next step is to constrain the found set by using a greater than or less than comparison operator. So normally we do equal searches, but it's a greater than or less than. Well, the search of that greater than or less than was in a indexed field. The indexing of that field is one giant block of code or text that's in the FileMaker solution. And so really the idea with constraining a found set is that you want to do a comparison against only the 100 records, right? Because you've already removed the other, 995,000 or whatever it is records, right? That makes sense. And so the idea is that by doing the constrain search on the index field, especially with that greater than or less than operator, it was chewing through the million record index instead of just, if it was an unindexed calculation field or unindexed field, then it would have to manually do them by hand. But manually doing 100 records kind of by hand, FileMaker by hand, as opposed to trying to use the index to make it go faster, that 100 record analysis was faster than chewing through the million record index. Does that make sense? So that's kind of what he's doing here.
Yeah, I'm trying to simulate it, but I only have 100,000 records, so and I'm not running over a network, so everything is pretty fast. But it was kind of visible when I look for records like less than 2,000. It's actually a text field. Then I get 20,000, and when I do constraint and you see a kind of small delay.
Yeah.
But when I do the same thing and try to constrain by unindexed, oh, well, so it's difficult to simulate without preparation, obviously.
Yeah, no, exactly. So Stu says was important would that slowdown, the slowdown happened because you were doing the constraining against an indexed field with greater than or less than in there, right? So if you were doing with the equal sign in there, I don't know it would be so noticeable.
Let me try one thing, and that's or just look for.
Yeah, Code to Go. You keep going there. Code to Go on Twitch is talking about.
So now I have 100 records, and do constraint.
Oops, try again.
Well, but it was fast, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah, the issue, there's two issues here. One is that you're back hammering against the full index. And
exactly.
the greater than or less than means it's not doing an exact search. It has to evaluate the whole range, right? So
basically, if you do equal in an index field, and the index is a B tree, so it just searches through that tree very quickly to the single node, which gets you all those records having that value. But if you do less than, then you have to scan through that tree to all other nodes which are beneath that one to find all the records which are matching the condition. So searching for less than is significantly more complex working with the index than searching for equal. And the difference between using index actually makes the search at least 10 times faster than scanning through the values, more often, even more. Yeah. But if you have 1 million records and you have just 100 records found set, so dealing with that million records index, especially if that index is, for instance, for unique values, so every single record has its own node in that index, versus just going through 100 records, even in a loop, that 100 records manually processed is going to take less time. So what this customer was finding out is that actually going through those records in a loop and omitting them manually was faster than doing a constraint found set, until actually FileMaker suggested him to use unstored calculation for the search in the constraint found set, and that was even faster than the loop.
So David Angel says, so you have to move the found records to a table with the records not indexed. You just have like what we had right here. He has two fields that essentially could have the same value, but one's indexed and one is not indexed, right? So
yeah, you can have an index field and you just create a calculation referencing that field and go to storage options and make it an index, and that's it.
Okay, great. Cool. Okay, so Code to Go on the marketplace. I saw this over there on Twitch. Says, sounds like a change in the way that finds work from about 10 versions ago. FFP always used to search all records, even when you were searching on an index field as part of the query. Good to see. Yeah, I mean, the whole idea with extend and constrain, constrain specifically, not extend, but constrain is to you do the initial search to get you down, but then you do another search to kind of perpetually move you to the target found set, which is much smaller. And you want it to not be going back and reevaluating those previous million records because they've already been removed, so they shouldn't be part of the conversation. But if you tell it to search on index, it's going to look at the index for all million. And if you're using the greater than or less than operators in there, then it's not just hunting for one thing or a specific thing, it's hunting for a whole range. And that's where
this just reminds me of one thing that Mozilla and I was dealing with in my SQL, and it was the same issue. So basically, when you create a subset of records, the found set, FileMaker creates that subset, but it does not create a new index for each index field that will only contain those values from that file set. So if it uses this index for subsequent constraint or extend file set queries, it still uses the original index of all records.
Yep. That's the whole point. Yep.
And the same actually happens in SQL as well. So if you do a query, you get subset of records, and then you try to work with that subset and do another query, then that subset doesn't have indexes.
Code2Go says, would it be faster to create multiple find requests with an exact search value rather than a comparison? Well, it depends how many possible, what the range of records is, right? Code2Go.
Yes, definitely.
Right?
But it's a common solution, because if for instance you're searching for a date range, or maybe you want to make a relationship on a date range, it's usually much faster to just explode that date range to the individual dates and use that as multi-key rather than using less than or greater than predicates.
So you're saying actually kick the data out to another table and evaluate it against that separate. Is that what you said?
No, basically, if you're searching for like a range of dates from the 1st of February to the 10th of February,
sure,
you can either use those beginning and ending date and less than greater than predicates in the relationship. But if you instead generate all those dates like 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 7th, 8th,
and like global on one side. Yeah.
And as a multiple values in the same field separated.
Oh, multiple value. So it's a multi-predicate. It's a multi-predicate key. Yes. Okay.
Yes.
Interesting.
And use that with an equal relationship. That's much faster.
All right, real quick. Hey, just show people.
Values.
Just bring up a date field on here and just type. Well, we need a text field. Can you just go into a text field and show people what we're talking about real quick? When we say multi-predicate. So he's going to put, okay, you're going somewhere. This is kind of more advanced stuff here. Most of the beginning people don't talk. So here is a value, okay? So it's 100, but.
Yeah, this was not the text here, but
there
this
we
is
go.
One.
So this is, yeah. So the values are 2 and 3 and 5 and 7. It doesn't matter what these are. And if this is on like the parent side of the relationship, then the matches will include everything that matches each line separately. So everything that matches the 2 and the 3 and the 5 and the 7. So it's doing individual matches. To us, it's a range of, it looks like primary. Well, yeah, it looks like primes. Are those mostly primes? I guess kind of mostly.
These are actual primes because this is actually prime.
Oh, there we go, prime right there. Okay, I wasn't even reading. I was just looking at the numbers going, those look like primes. So that's what a multi-predicate is. So FileMaker handles a relationship based upon a single value in the value list. Most of the time when we have a relationship, I'm going to do to my annotation here, we only have one value, so it goes off and it's hunting for the match for the 2. Right? Makes sense. But if you create a script that loads this and it does, carriage and it builds this value list, right? Then FileMaker is going to go to each one and try to evaluate the relationships and then bring that back in the portal, right? And that would be faster than doing the greater than or less than range. Okay. So there's another hot tip. That's 2 hot tips in one day.
And Stu actually is right that Nick R was the first guy who came up with this idea to expand that date range into individual values.
Okay. All right, cool. Right. Well, yeah, Nick Hunter or Nick. Well, it's a Nick Orr, and then probably Nick Hunter too, I would guess. Nick Hunter's always doing stuff like that. All right, cool. Well, we're at the top of the hour. We're out of time. So tomorrow's going to be a continuing conversation on 20.3. Everyone, tomorrow will be kind of a continuation of the conversation with Jacob Taylor. Jacob Taylor will be here. We're going to be talking about the tunneling shenanigans and kind of probably decidedly. Well, today wasn't supposed to be super technical, but HOnza is really sharp. So once again, HOnza, if anyone wants to contact HOnza or check out your Goad, what's your Xcode, right? Your Xcode, you have some really neat products, right? Your FileMaker Go.
The best way is to go to the 2for-you-software.com website and find everything there.
Cool.
Or if you want to go my path, you can go to honza.guru as well.
Okay, cool. All right, and then tomorrow we'll carry the conversation forward. And if anyone has any other interesting comments or questions about 20.3, feel free to shoot us an email to support@rcconsulting.com, and that will get routed to me. All right, that's it today. Yeah, Code to Go says that HOnza is a smart cookie.
Thanks.
All right, have a good one. Got a report of an individual up here who may be a FileMaker license. Well, it's potentially expired. Look at the back of that car right there. Looks like the FileMaker license has expired. Sir, I need you to step out of the vehicle. Sir, step out of the vehicle. Sir.